Hi and welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to make this beautiful button-up shirt with bubble sleeve and an elongated cuff. If you're new to my channel, welcome. Please click the subscribe button, click the bell so you get updates when I post new videos. And now let's get right into our tutorial.
I'm going to explain whatever lines that I have on this fabric. I'm using shirting fabric for this, white shirting fabric. The first thing I did was to go on to mark my top line, which is usually my shoulder. So after marking my shoulder, I marked the armhole depth from shoulder to this line. This is what I have here. I marked my bust point line, I marked my waistline, and then I marked the length of the blouse. I mark the length of the blouse here plus half an inch. For shirts, basically, you really do not need your under bust line. Now, I want to explain something else. You can see that I have like 3 lines here. This is 1 inch, another 1 inch, and another 1 inch. They make a total of 3 inches. And this is what is going to form the button placket, okay? Please note that my fabric is folded into 2. And by the time I cut it open, these 3 inches will be on both sides. So one will house our buttonhole and the other side will house the buttons. Okay, so I have 3 inches, which is going to be folded, to 1 inch. Now, the third line that is away from the fold, okay, this is the folded part. Can you see? This third line here is our main center front. Do you understand? So this third line is our main center front, and it's from this third line we are going to be marking all our horizontal measurements. So I'm going to come right here at the top line. From this point, I'll mark my shoulder measurement divided by 2. I'll be going with 16 inches for mine, okay? So that will give me 8, right? I'll come right here. I'll mark the same thing. I'll mark 8 inches. And then I'm going to join the points. If you do not know how to get all these lines, I have a tutorial on how to measure yourself and how to draft the basic bodice block. So you can go ahead and watch that. I'll leave a link in my description box so it will be easy for you to find. So on this line, I'm going to come here and mark my bust measurement divided by 4. So my bust is 36. 36 divided by 4 is 9 inches. I'm going to come right here and mark 9 inches. I come here, mark my shoulder slant of 1 inch. Whatever I have left, 8 inches, is divided into 2, so I mark 4 inches. Come inwards by half an inch, just like this. And then I'm going to connect here to here to here with my French curve. That is how I always get my armhole curve. Then I'm going to come right here from the center front. Remember I said the third line away from the folded part is my center front. I'm going to be marking my neck width, and I'll be going with a neck width of 3.5. So I'll be going with 3.5, and then I'm going to connect the neck width now to this 1 inch shoulder slant that we have here. So after marking my shoulder slant, I'm going to come right from the shoulder line. I'll be marking my neck depth. Please ignore this line that I have here. It's actually a mistake, okay? I'll be going with a neck depth of 2.5 inches. So I'm going to mark 2.5 inches. So I mark the same 2.5 inches on all these lines that I have at this part that is my button placket area. So I mark the same 2.5 inches there. I'm going to join them with a straight line, and from this one I'll be connecting it with a curve to this point here, okay, to the neck width, just like this. So I think I should cover this up so you guys can see what I'm talking about. So this is my neckline. This is my new neckline, okay? So once I'm done with this now, I'm going to come to my waist, mark my waist divided by 4, okay? My waist divided by 4 is 7.5. I'll be adding 1 inch for that allowance. I'll come here at the bottom. This part, the length of my blouse is 28 inches. I want this to get to my hip. So I took the hip circumference for this measurement here, and my hip divided by 4 is 10.25. So I'm just going to mark that. okay, and then I'll connect this to this to this. So after doing this now, I'm going to come right at this part. We're going to be doing a shaping for our shirt. So I'm going to come up by 4 inches. This is what's going to sort of like create the curve at the side of your dress. And then I'm going to come right here and mark 6 inches like this. And then from the straight part now, I will just blend it. Okay, I'll just blend it like this. So did you see that? That was very, very easy to do. Now, what I'm going to do next is to come here and mark my bust span, nipple to nipple distance from this center front. So I'll come here now. Mine is 7. 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. I come right here, mark 3.5. Come somewhere down here and mark 3.5. Okay, so just anywhere, sure. You can even let it get all the way down to the hip line, 3.5, all the way down like this. Okay, so I'm going to come down from the bust point line by ½ inch. At the waistline, I'm going to mark my dart of 1 inch, so ½ inch on both sides. You can also go with 3/4 inches for yours, 3/4 inches on both sides. So this means that your dart allowance is going to be 1.5 inches. Okay, so after marking this one now, I'm going to come here. My entire dart length is going to be 11 inches. So from the ½ inch below my bust point line, I'm just going to measure 11 inches. Then I'm going to go on to connect my darts to form our, normal darts, just like this. So after this now, what I'm going to do is to come right at the bottom here. I'm going to be adding ½ inch at the bottom for seam allowance. I'm going to add 1 inch at the side seam. I'm going to add ½ inch at the armhole, ½ inch at my shoulder slant, and then I'm going to add ½ inch at my neckline area. Okay, so guys, after adding my seam allowances, this is what I have. I'm going to go on to cut my fabric like this, okay, like this, and then I'm going to be dividing the center front into 2. Like I said, this is going to form our button plackets, so I'm going to need to divide that as well. So guys, after cutting this out, this is what I have. What I'm going to do for this button placket area, so that it will be a bit stiff, is to go on to glue some paper stay on this part, okay? And you are going to be doing it on both of the fabrics, so not on just one. So guys, I've gone to stay the button hole and the button plackets. You may not necessarily see it because my stay is white. Okay, so I've gone to do that, and then I folded my fabric. Now, this one that I have right here is what is going to be on my right side of my body. Okay, this one is going to be on my left side, and the one that is going to be on my right side is the one that is going to house the buttonholes. This particular one is going to house the buttons. Okay, so for the ones that will house the buttons, I just went ahead to fold it by those 1 inches that I marked on the fabric. Okay, this one will house the buttonholes, and what I did was to first of all fold it by ½ inch. Okay, and then whatever I have left, I just did like a double fold to the center front. The buttonhole part is usually a little wider than the ones that will take the button, so that is the difference between these two parts. The back is going to be pretty much easy. The only difference for the back will be the armhole and the neckline. For the back, the neckline is always higher up. So I folded my fabric into 2 for the back, but one thing you need to take note of is that the back is not open. Okay, the back is not open, so we're not going to be doing any cutting. The back is going to be closed, and what I'm going to do is to just place my front on the back. Okay, making sure that the folded part of my back is aligned with this center front line that you can see here. So what I'm going to do is to just trace out what I have here. So after I've traced it out, I'm just going to come right here at the top and just, straighten it out so that we can have our top line back. For the back, we are going to be making it ½ inch. Okay, ½ inch back for shirts is a standard. And then I'm going to go on to curve it out like this. If you look at your shirt, the back is not always so low, except you are doing a different style. So for the armhole at the back, you're not going to be having any coming in by half an inch. Because I came in here by half an inch, I'm going to come out for the back by half an inch. Do you understand? Then I'll connect it like this. So did you see that? And then straight to this point. So I just came out by half an inch for the back from the front, okay? And then I just connected it from here to here, all the way up here. I hope that makes sense to us. So the last change that we are going to make is for the dart. It's going to come up a little bit. So my dart for the back is going to come up half inch above the bust line. So I'm going to mark my nipple to nipple distance from the center back. Mine is 3.5. I said half an inch above. Okay, so I mark that. Mark that same 3.5 again. Then I'll mark half an inch on both sides. Come somewhere here, just mark 3.5 inches again. Okay, and then I'm going to join it to have a straight line like so. For this one now, the length of my dart is going to be 12 inches. Okay, so I mark my 12 inches and then I'm going to join my darts like this. So you can see how simple it was to do the back, right? And then what I'm going to do now is to go on to cut this out, following the back neckline, okay? Please, not the front. You need to be careful now. Following the back neckline, the shoulder, following the back armhole, the side seam, and then, you know, just all the way down, cut everything out. So guys, my back pattern is ready. This is what we have. So what I'm going to do right now is to go on to sew the darts for both the back and the front piece. Okay, I'm going to go on to sew the darts. The next thing I'm going to do is to stitch down the button plackets on the front shirt pattern down. Okay, I'm going to stitch it down. The part that is going to be housing the buttonholes, I will stitch both the edge of, you know, the fold, and then this part that is open here, I'm going to stitch both places down. Okay, but this one that we just take the buttons is just to hold this part down. That's what I'm going to do. So guys, I've stitched the buttonhole parts. This is what I have, both the buttonhole and the button part. I've stitched both of them down and pressed it. I've stitched my darts as well for both front and back, pressed it. Now what I did for the hem of this blouse, because it's kind of curved, it's not going to be easy for you to do a rolled hem. So what I did was to overlock the fabric, then I folded it and then used my iron to press it down before going on to stitch, you know, the edge. I didn't roll it, I just overlocked the edge, folded the fabric, pressed it down, and went to stitch right at the edge. It will give you a much neater finish. It's always difficult to do a rolled hem with curved edges. Another option, if you don't want to do it the way I just explained, is for you to use a bias tape to conceal the raw edges. Okay, so that is what I did for, you know, the entire hem of this shirt that we are making. I've gone ahead to join the side seam. Now my side seam allowance is 1 inch. I didn't go with 1 inch, I went with half an inch because I wanted the blouse to be a little loose. Okay, I didn't want it to be too fitted so that, you know, the front of the shirt is not opening. So that's why I just went with half an inch seam allowance at the side seam. Okay, and then I've gone ahead to join the shoulder seams as well by a half an inch. So this is the main shirt block that we have. After this, now what's left for us to do is basically the collar, okay, and the sleeves. Do you understand? So the sleeves is where the drama is. Now for the collar, I have a tutorial on how to make a basic shirt collar. Now I have 2 tutorials. I have one that is very, very easy and straightforward to do, and that is what I used in making this shirt collar that you can see here. So I'll link that tutorial in description box. If you prefer the other one, definitely give it a go and, you know, use it. Okay, so I've made my shirt collar based on that tutorial. I did not want to repeat it in this one because that would just be a repetition anyway. So I have the tutorial for that. So this is what I have, guys, for my shirt collar. Okay, so what I'm going to do for this shirt collar now is to go on to stitch it to the neckline of this shirt. So guys, what I'm going to do now is to take one part of the collar. Okay, I'm going to attach the center of the collar to the center back of the shirt. to the center of the center back or the center back, whichever one you understand. Okay, so I'll just go on to pin it down. So can you see what I'm doing? Then I'm going to pin the edge of the collar here to the button plackets, making sure that the edge of the collar stand is also matching the edge of the button plackets. That is very, very important for you to have a very, very, clean finish. Okay, and then I go on to pin that down as well. I'll do the same thing for this other side, and then I'm going to pin down. So you can see that it's just one part of the collar that I'm pinning down to the shirt, the neck of the shirt fabric. Do you understand? So now that I've pinned them down, I'm going to take this to my sewing machine, and then I'll start sewing from the center back to this side, then from the center back to the other side, and then I'll come show you what we're going to do next. So guys, after sewing the first part of the collar, this is what we have. What I'm going to do next is to go on to grab the other parts, and then I folded it in by 1/2 inch seam allowance already. I'm just going to use that to cover this part up, okay, just like this, and then I'll take it to my sewing machine and stitch all the way down from the edge here to the edge here. So guys, after sewing my collar, this is what I have. And now we can move to the sleeve part. The sleeve part is divided into 3 sections. You will have the main sleeve, which is going to be a short sleeve. The middle part is a bubble sleeve, and the last part is like an elongated cuff. So I used my basic sleeve pattern, which is long sleeve, to do this part. What I just did was I just folded it to the length that I wanted the sleeve to be. And mine is 10 inches. Then I have 1/2 inch seam allowance at the bottom here. I have 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top here. Okay, so that's how short I want this part to be. Then I will now determine how long I want the bubble sleeve to be, and then how long I want the elongated cuff part to be. The total length of this sleeve is going to come to 26 inches. I'm just going to go on to keep this aside, and then we're going to cut the middle part, which is the bubble part of the sleeve. So guys, for the bubble part of this sleeve, I'll be making a 180-degree flare, but I'm going to need the straight sleeve. Now what I did for mine was to come and check what I will have left after sewing by a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Okay, so the total that I have here is on fold is 6.5. So if I sew by 1/2 inch, I'll be left with 6 inches, and then the circumference of the sleeve will now become 12. So 6 plus 6, that is 12, right? So for this bubble sleeve, the top is going to have a little bit of gathers, the bottom as well, okay? So the part that is going to be connected to this bottom of the short sleeve, I'm going to make it a little wider. So I'll be adding 8 inches to my 12 inches, and that will make it 20 inches. What I'm going to do now is to divide that 20 inches by 3.14. 3.14 is a standard, and that will give me 6.369. Since I don't have that on my tape rule, I'm going to go with 6.375. Okay, so I'm going to come right here. From what I did here was to draw a straight line at the selvage. I don't want the selvage parts. I guess I should make that line more visible. Okay, so my fabric is folded into 2, not the usual 4. For 180-degree flare, I folded my fabric into 2, okay? I forgot to mention that, not into 4, into 2. So from where I drew this line, I'm going to be marking my 6.375, okay? All around like this, till I get to this edge. So I'm just going to continue like that. And then I'm just going to connect it like this, okay? So the next thing I'm going to do now is to mark the length of the sleeve, and I'll be going with 10.5 inches inclusive of seam allowance. So from where I mark the 6.375, I'm going to mark my 10.5 inches, okay? So I'll just keep moving my tape rule like this and making my mark. 10.5, this is inclusive of seam allowance at the bottom and at the top. And of course, if you want to make this part longer, it is definitely your choice. So once I'm done marking, I will go on to cut this out, and then I'm going to duplicate this so that I have 2 pieces, 1 for each sleeve, okay? Okay, so guys, I've cut the first piece, and I've used the first piece to cut out the second piece, and this is what I have. Remember, I did 10.5 inches for the length, which is inclusive of
half an inch seam allowance here, half an inch seam allowance at the top. So the length of this will come to a total of what? 9.5, okay, because 10.5 minus 1 is 9.5. And the length of this short sleeve is 11, inclusive of seam allowance, half an inch at the top, half an inch at the bottom, half an inch at the top. By the time we remove 1 inch from 11 inches, it will become 10 inches. 10 plus 9.5 will give us 19.5. So I said that the full length of this sleeve is 26 inches, right? So if we remove 19.5, that's the total length of this sleeve. If we remove the total length of these two that we have here, if we remove it from 26 inches, that will give us 6.5 inches. So the last bit that we are going to cut out, the length is going to be 6.5 inches. And in order to cut that part, you are going to need the circumference of your wrist or your cuff, where you want, the sleeve to get to. If I'm measuring mine, I'll be going with, let's say, around 8 inches. So guys, in order to cut the last part, which we have calculated the length to be 6.5 inches and we have measured the width to be 8 inches, what I'm going to do right now is to fold my fabric. My fabric is already folded like this, okay? So I folded it like that. I'm going to go on to fold it again. So the length is going to remain the same, but we are going to add half an inch seam allowance at the top. No need to add half an inch at the bottom here because it is, folded. We're not going to sew that part. So what I'm going to do is to come right here and measure the 6.5 inches. Well, we're going to add half an inch seam allowance, so we're going to make that 7 inches. So I come right here and mark 7 inches. I come at another point and mark 7 inches. Okay, making sure that 7 is at the folded edge at the bottom. And then I'm going to join the points to have a straight line, or join the marks to have a straight line like this. So for the width part, we are going with 4 inches, right? The reason why we are going with 4 inches, what we measured for the circumference was 8 inches. If we divide that into 2, we're going to have 4 inches. And then we're going to add half an inch for seam allowance, okay? So I'm going to come right here and mark 4.5. Come right here as well. I mark 4.5. And then I join the points like so. And then we're going to cut. So I'm going to duplicate this because this is just for one sleeve. I'm going to duplicate this to have the second piece. So guys, I have my sleeve pieces all cut out, okay? So I have the short sleeve, the middle bubble part or flare part, and then we have the elongated cuff right here, okay? I'm going to go on to overlock the raw edges of this and this. I'm going to go ahead and add stay to this part because we want it, as stiff as possible. We're not going to be overlocking any raw edges because, these parts right here are going to be sewn in. So guys, for the main sleeves, I've overlocked everywhere and I sewed it down by a half an inch seam allowance. This is what we have here. For the bubble parts, I only overlocked this part here, the top part, the one that is going to be attached to this part of the sleeve, okay? I overlocked it. I overlocked the side seam area. And then what I went ahead to do was to sew the side seam by half an inch seam allowance, okay? Then I ran a basting stitch or a gathered stitch at the top here and at the bottom here because we are going to be gathering this part to the circumference of my sleeve. This top right here will be gathered to the circumference of my sleeve. This part right here will be gathered to around the circumference of the cuff part, okay? So I'll go ahead and gather this off camera. Do you understand? I'll gather this part and this part off camera. Now for the cuff part, I don't know if I explained this earlier. My cuff circumference that I measured was 8 inches, right? But I made an adjustment to this. I made it 10 inches, okay? Because I'm not going to be closing this up. I'm sort of like going to overlap it so that it will have, buttons and buttonholes at this point, okay? So that is why I made it up to 10 inches to make allowance for that overlap. And then I went ahead to sew the insides by a half an inch seam allowance, which is what we have here, okay? And what I'm going to do now is to just keep this piece aside, that is the cuff piece, and then go on to gather the bubble parts, okay? So guys, after gathering this part, this is what I have, okay? And what I'm going to be doing is to attach this part to the sleeve, okay? And I'm going to make sure that the seam at this part, on this puff part, is in the middle of the back of the sleeve, okay? Because we're going to be attaching like a cuff
So first of all, I'm going to turn my sleeve right sides out. So here is the back of my sleeve. I'm going to wear this sleeve into, or wear the sleeve into the puff, or wear the puff on the sleeve, okay? So this is what I have, guys. The midpoint of my sleeve is 6 inches. So I just go ahead and mark 3. I place the seam. I place the seam at the top here, right at that 3 inches. I'm going to go on to pin this down. And then I'll be pinning all around the sleeve like this, okay? So make sure to arrange it really well, pin down. And then what I'm going to do is to sew this by a 1/2 inch seam allowance for the 2 sleeves, okay? So guys, I've sewn this part of the bubble sleeve to our, short sleeve. The next thing we want to do is to attach our elongated cuff to the other side, okay? So after stitching this part down, I went on to loosen the seam so that we can have like a proper cuff. And then what I'm going to do is to attach the edge of the elongated cuff to the edge of the bubble sleeve here. So I'll just go on to pin this down like this, making sure that it is edge to edge. That is very, very important too. So I'll come to this other side. What I'm going to do at this side is make sure that there is a bit of overlap by about 1 inch, okay? So you can go ahead and measure yours, and I clip down, and then I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and then sew this down from the edge all the way to where the fabric stops. Remember I said leave about 1 inch out on this other side, okay? So whatever I do here, I'll repeat the same thing for the other sleeve and then show you how we are going to close this up, okay? It's one part of the cuff fabric that we attach to the bubble sleeve. So guys, after sewing one side of the elongated cuff to this fabric, what I'm going to do now is to go ahead and use the other 1/2 inch. I sewed by 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'll use the other 1/2 inch to cover up all the raw edges that you can see here, okay? So I'll just go on to cover it up like this. So can you see what I'm doing? I'll cover it up like this, and then I'll be stitching very, very close to the edge of the cuff, just like I did for this one, okay? This one is already completed. That is why it is looking like this. So this part that I loosened up, I'll just go on to do a hand tacking at that point. It's going to be loosed up like this, and then we're going to be attaching buttons and button holes for that overlap, okay? So it is very, very simple. I'll just go ahead and just repeat the same thing for this one. Now that my 2 sleeves are completed, it is time to attach them to my shirt bodice, okay? So I grab the center of the sleeve. Now my sleeve is right sides out, okay? So I'm going to insert it into the armhole like this, match the center of the sleeve to the shoulder seam at the armhole, and then I'm going to pin that down, okay? So after pinning that down, this is what I have. I'm going to match the side seam of the sleeve to the side seam of the bodice, okay, around the armhole area. So I'm just going to pin it like that. So what I'm going to do right now is to take this to my sewing machine. I'll be sewing by 1/2 inch seam allowance from the shoulder seam all the way to the side seam here. Do the same thing for the other side as well, okay? And then once I do that, I'll repeat the same thing for this other sleeve. And that's it, guys. We are done. We're going to see how this shirt looks on our mannequin.
So guys, here is how our shirt looks after we are all done, fixing our buttonholes, fixing our buttons. If you want the puff part of this sleeve to be really, really big, what I'll advise you to do is to, increase the length of the flare so that it is longer, and then shorten your sleeve cuff. Or you can shorten your main sleeve and then make the flare part that is going to form the puff, make that part, very long, make that part a little longer. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, kindly give us a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, turn on the bell so you get updates when I post new videos, and I'll be seeing you in my next tutorial. Bye!